A guy sees a newspaper ad that says transatlantic voyage only $5. He's never been overseas, so he heads down to the dock on the coast, and sure enough, there's a shack with a sign, Transatlantic Voyage $5. He gives the attendant $5 and is handed a pair of oars. The attendant shows him a rowboat and tells him to keep rowing east. The guy rows all day and late into the night. He notices in the moonlight another rowboat, also slowly making its way across the water. He rows up to it and calls out, "Hey, transatlantic voyage for $5? The other fellow slowly nods. After several hours rowing along, the guy calls out to the other voyager, "Do they serve meals on this trip?" The other guy answers back, "They didn't last year." 0. After the summer break, the students return to school, and their teacher is eager to hear about their vacation adventures. She stands at the front of the classroom, a warm smile on her face, and says, "Class, I'd love to hear all about what you did over the break. Let's start with little Johnny." Little Johnny, a lively and sometimes mischievous student, sits up in his chair. The teacher asks, "So Johnny, what did you do over the summer?" Johnny, with a hint of pride in his voice, replies, "We visited my grandmother in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania." The teacher, impressed by Johnny's use of such a complex place name, responds, "Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania? That sounds like an excellent vocabulary word. Can you tell the class how to spell Punxsutawney?" Johnny's face suddenly takes on a thoughtful expression. He hesitates, clearly trying to remember the spelling of the long and tricky name. After a moment, he looks up at the teacher with a sheepish grin and says, "Well, come to think of it, we actually went to Ohio." 1. A young woman from New York was so depressed that she decided to end her life by throwing herself into the ocean, but just before she could throw herself from the docks, a handsome young man stopped her. Arrow. I can show you a way on my ship. I'll take care of you, bring you food every day, and keep you happy. With nothing to lose, combined with the fact that she had always wanted to go to Italy, the woman accepted. That night, the sailor brought her aboard and hid her in a small but comfortable compartment in the hold. From then on, every night, he would bring her sandwiches, a bottle of red wine, and make love to her until dawn. 3 weeks later, she was discovered by the captain during a routine inspection. "What are you doing here?" asked the captain. "I have an arrangement with one of the sailors," she replied. "He brings me food and I get a free trip to Italy." "I see," the captain said. "Anything else?" Her conscience got the best of her and she added with some embarrassment, "Plus, he's screwing me." "He certainly is," replied the captain. "This is the Staten Island Ferry." 2. Two friends are at the mall, standing near a store and chatting. They spot a stunning girl walking by and can't help but admire her. They watch her as she browses through the shops, still unable to take their eyes off her. One friend nudges the other and says, "Wow, she's something else. We've been watching her for ages. Do you think she noticed us?" The other friend shrugs and says, "I hope not. We've been pretty obvious." Just then, the beautiful girl approaches them with a playful smile. She says, "Excuse me, gentlemen. I couldn't help but notice you staring. Are you shopping for compliments, or is that just your natural, creepy look?" The friends are caught off guard, and one of them stammers, "No, we were just—" The girl laughs and says, "Well, just so you know, the only thing on sale today is your dignity, and I think you're both out of stock." 3. It was Friday, and 4 nuns went to the priest at the local Catholic church to ask for the weekend off. They argued back and forth for a few minutes. Finally, the priest agreed to let them leave the convent for the weekend. "However," he said, "as soon as you get back Monday morning, I want you to confess to me what you did over the weekend." The 4 nuns agree and run off. Monday comes, and the 4 nuns return. The first nun goes to the priest and says, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned." The priest asks, "What did you do, sister?" She replies, "I watched an R-rated movie." The priest looks up at heaven for a few seconds, then replies, "You are forgiven. Go and drink the holy water." The first nun leaves, and the 4th nun begins to chuckle quietly under her breath. The second nun then goes up to the priest and says, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned." The priest replies, "Okay, what happened?" She says, "I was driving my brother's car down the street in front of his house, and I hit a neighbor's dog and killed it." The priest looks up to heaven for half a minute, then says, "You are forgiven. Go and drink the holy water." The second nun goes out. By this time, the fourth nun is laughing quite audibly. Then the third nun walks to the priest and says, "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned." The priest asks, "Out with it. What did you do?" She says, "Last night I ran naked up and down Main Street." The priest looks up at heaven for a full 5 minutes before responding, "God forgives you. Go and drink the holy water." She leaves. The fourth nun falls on the floor, laughing so hard tears run down her cheeks. The priest asks her, "Okay, what did you do that was so bloody funny?" The fourth nun replies, "I peed in the holy water." 4. A new young monk arrives at the monastery, and as with all new monks, he is assigned to help the other monks in copying the old canons and laws of the church by hand. He notices, however, that all of the monks are copying from copies, not from the original manuscript. So, the new monk goes to the head abbot to question this, pointing out that if someone made even a small error in the first copy, it would never be picked up. In fact, that error would be continued in all of the subsequent copies. The head monk says, "We have been copying from the copies for centuries, but you make a good point, my son." So he goes down into the dark caves underneath the monastery, where the original manuscript is held as archives in a locked vault that hasn't been opened for hundreds of years. Hours go by, and nobody sees the old abbot. So, the young monk gets worried and goes downstairs to look for him. He sees him banging his head against the wall and wailing, "We forgot the R! We forgot the R!" His forehead is all bloody and bruised, and he is crying uncontrollably. The young monk asks the old abbot, "What's wrong, Father?" With a choking voice, the old abbot replies, "The word is celebrate." The word is celebrate. 5. A woman has a serious accident and ends up in the hospital, undergoing surgery. Her husband waits in the waiting room, distraught, when several hours later, the surgeon exits the operating room and approaches him. "Hello, the surgery went well. Unfortunately, the recovery will be very long. First, she'll need years of physical therapy costing $2,000 per month." The husband starts to get worried. Then she'll likely need more surgeries in the future, but they won't be covered by insurance and could amount to $100,000 to $150,000. The man starts to break into a cold sweat. And in reality, she'll need a high-quality wheelchair and a suitable vehicle for transporting the disabled. But with $30,000, you should manage. The husband, deeply concerned about the money, looks desperate. The doctor then pats him on the back and says, "Don't worry, dude. I was just kidding. She's dead."